When we think of violence in video games, we most commonly imagine first-person shooters, whose casual approach to violence includes driving music meant to propel the player forward. However, several recent games take a very different approach to war. With plots that revolve around morality and consequence, these games focus on the effect of conflict on individuals, and as such, their music evokes regret, grief, and sorrow.
I just wish I'd never seen it.
This video will examine the music of 3 games that explore themes of morality, choice, consequences, and what it means to be, or in one case, to become human. Unlike first-person shooters, the point of these games is not to eliminate opponents, but rather to engage with moments of decision-making that dramatically influence the outcome of the game. Perhaps unexpectedly, music has a strong role in the emotional impact of such choices. Catherine Isbister, in How the Games Move Us, argues that video games have the unique properties of choice and flow that generate a sense of responsibility, consequence, and empathy in the player. She cites specific musical elements that contribute to these emotional outcomes, including the use of the minor key and a slow tempo to produce sadness and anxiety in the player. In this video, I'll explore other examples of such musical elements, and I'll discuss how they link to the emotional landscape of the game, as well as the resulting effect on player immersion. Let's examine our first game, Papers, Please, an indie game released in 2013 by developer Lucas Pope. Pope, who also composed the music for the game, combined puzzle and simulation elements to explore the experiences of a border-crossing agent in an implied Eastern Bloc Cold War country. Players must verify travel documents, interrogate travelers, and keep track of ever-changing regulations regarding entry requirements. From a moral standpoint, the gameplay allows the player choice on a variety of issues. They may choose whether to support their rigid government or whether to covertly assist a dissident group, and they may also decide on whether or not to follow the rules based on their sympathy for other characters, or even for personal benefit. A major influence on these decisions is to preserve the well-being of the player's in-game family by having enough daily income to feed, house, and keep them warm. The player's resources become more meager as the game progresses, and as unexpected events impede their ability to earn income. The main theme, Glory to our Stotska, enters at the end of each workday, when the player receives the results of their daily work and makes decisions about the impact on their family. The song in many ways represents the repetitiveness of the player's daily work. The theme features significant repetition in its bass line and in the loop of the melody itself. Harmonically, the music features a very simple chord progression, primarily focusing on a tonic to dominant motion in D minor, as well as its relative key of F major. The song concludes with a typical cadential pattern of common practice tonality, the chords 1, 4, 5, 1. More evocatively though, the death theme music has features that both unsettle the listener and suggest the unfortunate consequences of the player's choices throughout the game. The bass line reverses the direction of the main themes and accelerates its rhythm. The key is unstable, switching every 2 bars between E minor, B flat major, an ambiguous tonal area, possibly G minor, and A minor. The phrase begins with the repetition of its rhythm, suggesting a standard sentence organization. But at the location where we would expect a cadence to occur, the melody instead leaps away from any stable arrival point. The tuning is also distorted. All of these features in combination suggest, both sonically and narratively, that instability predominates, stressing the fact that the protagonist has lost one or more family members. This War of Mine, another indie game, takes a very different approach with a sparse and often melancholic soundtrack. Described as a war survival game, this War of Mine is also structured around moral choices and their consequences. The player controls multiple characters trapped in a house during a siege of their city. The gameplay alternates between daytime, where the characters build, repair, and manage their resources, and nighttime, where one character goes out into the city to scavenge resources in oftentimes dangerous locations. Players must decide whether to steal in order to survive, to trade, or to suffer consequences such as illness or starvation if unable to acquire resources. In this War of Mine, the music is omnipresent and reflects the dystopian environment. Let's take a look at one song from the game, Someplace We Called Home, which you are currently listening to in the background of this video. The song features harmonic and tonal instability in a few different ways, and this instability mirrors that of the characters' day-to-day lives. The melody often resolves to scale degrees 4 or 5 rather than returning to the tonic scale degree. Mirroring the narrative elements of unease and conflict even further, the song uses prominent dissonances. Chords sometimes include an added second, a dissonance against its root, or occur under a high register pedal tone, mixing tonic and dominant functions. Digitally altered sounds occur frequently as well, representing the unnatural and uncanny. Something doesn't quite sound right. Lastly, shifting rather than stable or repeating rhythms and meter also unsettle the listener. Some beats last longer than expected in the song's 4/4 meter. Detroit Become Human, released in summer 2018, features a different style of gameplay. Its hyper-realistic motion capture combined with branching narrative paths makes the game feel much more like a choose-your-own-adventure film than a typical adventure-style video game. Despite the different visual aesthetic, it shares certain musical characteristics with Paper Please and This War of Mine. Detroit's story takes place 20 years in the future, where androids are sold to the general public. These androids work as public servants, caretakers, and companions, but also enlist savory roles as mercenaries, prostitutes, and worse. Initially seen merely as disposable machines, the public's views on androids change throughout the game as they are discovered to not only be sentient, but also to be self-aware and empathetic. In the following clip, androids are protesting on the street, and some have been murdered by police. The rebel leader, Marcus, makes the decision about what to do with 2 captured police officers. Notice a few musical features as the player makes decisions within the narrative. The opening moments build tension as Marcus walks up to the scene of the conflict. Musically, we hear a rising melodic glissando, but also a growth in volume, dissonances, and an increase in density. Underneath this, a heartbeat-like rhythm pulses in the low bass register.
They killed our people, Marcus.
We want justice, Marcus.
They have to pay.
Next, Marcus must decide what to do with his prisoners. While the player considers their decision, most of the music drops out, leaving only a pulsing rhythm in the trumpets and a high-pitched pedal tone on scale degree 5. Upon making the decision to spare the human officers, the music then progresses to a clear scale degree 1, doubled in several voices. This 5-to-1 motion and the elimination of dissonances at the arrival point strongly suggest an authentic cadence, one of the most stable harmonic paradigms in Western music.
An eye for an eye and the world goes blind.
Perhaps in response to Marcus's statement, "We won't punish a crime with another crime," the music quickly shifts to a style heavily reliant on voices rather than instruments, reminiscent of a church chorale. The melody descends in distinct pitches rather than via a glissando, which reverses the earlier ascending motion and thereby dissipates the tension. This shift from high intensity to low intensity, further emphasized by the slow tempo and minor mode of the concluding chorale, sonically mirrors Marcus's shift from anxiety to sorrow over the unnecessary conflict. The music thereby gives us a window of understanding into his emotional state.
We won't punish a crime with another crime.
These examples are only a brief glimpse into the interaction between music and players' emotional engagement. However, other sources suggest this relationship may be more substantial. Karen Collins identifies several studies that demonstrate music's effect on player immersion and their emotional connection. William Chang, in Sound Play, Video Games and the Musical Imagination, asks whether such games reveal anything about our true moral selves, and suggests that music, when sounded against or used to inflict bodily violence, undergoes ontological violence. It suffers an identity crisis, or more aptly, becomes a canvas onto which we, its patrons and admirers, project our own crises of identity, epistemology, and humanity. Chang suggests that a map between musical and emotional instability is not, in fact, unusual. The discomfort and unease suggested by musical features thereby contributes to the player's emotional engagement with the game.